Hey everyone, Hannah here from Daisy Farm Crafts. In this video, I want to show you how to work the stitches for my Bundle Up Candy Dots baby blanket. And for this blanket, I used Bernat Bundle Up yarn, which is 100% polyester. And I'm using a size I 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. And my baby blanket turned out to be about 34 inches by 34 inches. And to get that size, I needed 6 of the main gray color. I think it's called Dove. And then just one ball each of the 4 colors. So if you'd like to have the written pattern with you as you watch this video, be sure to visit daisyfarmcrafts.com, or you can also find the link to the pattern in the description of this video. Alright, so to get this baby blanket started, I started with a base chain that was a multiple of 3 plus 4. So in my actual baby blanket, I chained 85, but for this video, I'm just going to make a practice swatch that is 16. So a multiple of 3 times 4 is 12, plus 4 is 16. And I'm going to start in the 3rd chain from the hook. And I'm going to work what my mom and I like to call a wide half double crochet cluster. So I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into that 3rd chain, then yarn over and pull up a loop. That would be a normal half double crochet, but I'm going to do the same thing one more time. Yarn over, insert my hook into the same space, pull up another loop, then I should have 5 loops on my hook, and then I'm going to yarn over, pull through all 5 loops. So it's just like a half double crochet, I'm just doing one extra yarning over and pulling up a loop into the same space. So do that twice in a row. When you have 5, then yarn over, pull through all 5. And I'm just going to do that in each chain all the way across. So here I am on my last chain, working my last stitch. And then I'm just going to chain 2 and turn. And this is where the wide part comes of the wide half double crochet cluster, because I'm actually going to insert my hook in between the clusters of the previous row instead of going into the tops of the stitches. So I'm going to look for that first space that's right in between the last 2 stitches that I worked, and then work the same thing, another wide half double crochet cluster. So just look for the spaces in between the stitches, and then I'm going to do the same thing of just yarning over and pulling up a loop 2 times in a row before I yarn over and pull through all 5 loops. And when you get to the end of this row, you just want to make sure that you don't miss the final stitch. You want to make sure you work the last stitch in between the turning chain and the last stitch of the previous row. So just make sure we hit that last space. And then again, I'm just going to chain 2 and turn. Now I'm going to work one more row of this wide half double crochet cluster just in this gray color before I start incorporating the other colors to make our little candy dots. So after you have 3 rows of the gray, you're going to work the first 2 stitches of the 4th row with gray. So that's 1 cluster, and here's 2, still inserting your hook in between the stitches of the previous row. But on the second stitch, I'm going to pause because I'm going to start bringing in the new color. So I'm going to lay this new color across my hook and leave myself a tail that I can weave into the blanket later. And then I'm going to finish that stitch by pulling through with the new color. Pull that tight a little bit. I'm going to leave that tail behind for me to deal with later, but I'm going to bring the gray along the top of my work and crochet over it as I work a puff stitch. So this puff stitch is just like our clusters, except that I am yarning over and pulling up a loop 4 times in a row instead of 2. So after I've done that, yarn over and pull up a loop 4 times in a row, then I'm going to bring that yarn to the front of my work just so it doesn't get tangled. And then I'm going to finish that stitch with the gray, just so I have 1 puff stitch just in that color. Pull that tight a little bit. And now I'm going to crochet over that color for the next 2 stitches. So there's 1, and there's 2, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing. Pause on that second stitch, and now I'm going to pull through with that color because I have it, because I was carrying it, and then work another puff stitch with the pink. Bring that yarn to the front and then pull through with the gray. So I'm just going to keep that same pattern all the way across the row. So 2 stitches of gray followed by a puff stitch with the pink. And I'm always just crocheting over whichever color I'm not using so that I can easily pick it up when I need it. And when you get to the end of this row, you can just keep crocheting over that pink yarn. Make sure we get that last stitch in between the turning chain and the last stitch. And now we're done with this pink yarn until we work another 3 rows of gray. So you can just cut that yarn and leave a tail to weave into your blanket later. And now I'm just going to chain 2 and turn. If you do want to save yourself some time, you can also wrap this yarn around the back of your work and crochet over it. And in order to hide the yarn that I carried through on the previous row, I'm going to also insert my hook underneath that carried yarn. And that just helps to cover up the yarn that maybe was peeking through to really make them look like polka dots. So can be a little tricky to see. You may have to turn your work to the back side to make sure you get your hook under there. And then after the puff stitch, there's not going to be any yarn that was carried, so you don't need to worry about that. But just look for that little line of yarn that you carried through and try to stick your hook underneath it, and it'll really make your polka dots poke out a lot more. So, and then when you work your next row, you can also insert your hook underneath that tail that you carried if you want to carry it, just to save some time and make sure it's extra secure. And that is all you really need to know to work the main part of this blanket. I just worked 3 rows of gray in between each polka dot row. And then on the polka dot rows, I'm just working 2 stitches of gray and then a puff stitch with the color. And then I'm just carrying whichever color I'm not using across my work. And then on the rows right after the polka dot rows, I am making sure to insert my hook underneath the carried yarn just to cover it up. So, and then as you can see, I worked, the colors in sets of 3 before I switched to a new color. And I just had 2 shades of blue and 2 shades of pink that I alternated with each other. After I finished my blanket and wove in all my ends with the tapestry needle, I decided to add a simple shell border. But before I did the shells, I just worked 1 round of half double crochet around the outside. So I just pulled up a loop in the starting corner and chain 2, and then I just worked a regular half double crochet and tried to do 1 per row on the sides of my blanket. So if you can kind of count as you go along, use kind of the polka dots as your guide. You should have kind of 3 stitches for each gray section, and then 1 stitch for the polka dot rows. So kind of just count as you go and make sure that you have the same number of stitches as rows. And then when I got to the corner spaces, I just worked 3 half double crochets into each corner space. And then I'll just continue around and just work a half double crochet in between the stitches on the end of my blanket. So I'm just going to keep working half double crochet all the way around, working 3 stitches into each corner. Now here I am back at the corner that I started with, and I'm just going to slip stitch into that starting chain and then chain 1, and I'm going to keep going in the same direction, and I'm going to start my shell border. So I'm going to start with a single crochet into that first stitch, and then in the next stitch I'm going to work 5 double crochets all into that 1 stitch. And a double crochet means I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook and pull up a loop, then pull through 2 loops, pull through 2 more loops. So again, yarn over and pull up a loop, pull through 2, pull through 2. And I want to have 5 double crochets total all into that one stitch. Okay, now that I have 5, I'm going to skip the next stitch, and then I'm going to work a single crochet into the next. So I didn't skip one at the very beginning because I was starting at the corner, and so I wanted that first shell to lay a little better. But for the rest of the time, you're always going to skip one, work a single crochet, then skip another stitch, and then work 5 double crochets into that next stitch. So you should always have one stitch in between your 5 double crochets and your single crochet. So there's my 5, skip a stitch, work a single crochet, skip a stitch, work 5 double crochets. And now it looks like it's going to work out that if I just skip a stitch, I'm going to be right in the corner. But I'm going to work a slip stitch into this corner and then still skip a stitch as I go around, and then work my 5 double crochets, just so that I can help that corner, those corner shells kind of poke out more. And you really, it kind of just depends on where you land for the corners, to just do whatever works best. So sometimes maybe you need to skip an extra stitch so that you can work into that corner stitch. If you like the look of it better with a single crochet instead of a slip stitch, you can do that too. It's just really whatever you think looks best. So just keep continuing that pattern all the way around of 5 double crochets, skip, single crochet, skip, 5 double crochets again. And you're just going to do that all the way around the outside of your blanket. And then when you get back to your starting corner, all you need to do is just slip stitch into that starting corner and tie off, and then you're done. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoy making this baby blanket. If you make any of our Daisy Farm Crafts projects, please come share a picture with us on Facebook or Instagram using hashtag Daisy Farm Crafts. We would love to see. And as usual, the full written pattern for this blanket is on daisyfarmcrafts.com. So look for a link to that in the description. And I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much.